Okay, so here's what happened to me, and I solved the rectal torture, but they tried to make it seem like for years now, for like 3 years, that okay, if you're an EMF broadcast and you're walking around as a human and you're passed out in another location for a long time, they accumulate their own feces, the spiritually unclean that we were told of. Like the Howard Circle discussion that Kevin Christian talked about. If you're sitting out on an EMF machine, R&M machine, and you're passed out long enough walking around in 3D as an EMF broadcast, compacted feces builds up in your posterior to fool sensors and make it think that, like, if somebody killed me was the aim, that I would wake up in another location. For years, through trickery, this EMF group of gang stalkers faked the sensation of compacted feces behind me with nanos and maybe other stuff that can get leached out of your skin with an N52 level magnet, to make it appear that me as a real human was a EMF broadcast impersonating my real form. And the way the sensor would be able to know it would be that, oh, he's got a sensation of compacted feces walking around him. That's not a real Tim Young. And then if I'm an EMF broadcast, if I got killed, they would be like, you could totally kill him, and he'll wake up in his R&M bed machine in another location. So for the deception involved in attempts on my life, identity theft, attempted Zug streak, deception of maybe those that would be monitoring me as a non EMF broadcast person for like 2-3 years now, maybe. The sensors, as what they've termed it, were being fooled by a faked sense of feces compaction in my body, so that people thought I was an EMF broadcast. And then if I got killed, I would have woken up in my other bed. But the psychos, sociopaths, and narcissists sitting around that are never going to be able to design my suicide, they had all of that figured out ahead of time, and everybody fooled. So for the sensors that would be able to detect in a targeted individual or an EMF broadcast, if they had compacted feces behind them and they weren't in fact the real person, that's been fooled 100% for like so many years. I've got the N52 level magnet, and it's fixed the problem. I've never EMF broadcast in my life. Have other EMF perpetrators impersonated my form? Yeah. Have they tried to do identity theft? Yeah. Are they trying to have like gang stalkers impersonate TI to hurt TI more? Yeah. And then with this feces compaction thing, they were fooling the sensors to think that I, a real human, was in fact an EMF broadcast and wasn't myself. So that got cleared up. Neurolinguistic programming has been used throughout the course of this. All they need to know, according to Kevin, is my address, and they can get here. I had a Tesla coil delivery scheduled for yesterday. So some speculation about some perps came and closed off the street around the delivery time, so I wouldn't get the Tesla coil. It hasn't showed up yet. I may call about it. But yeah, for these deceptive, spiritually unclean, laying in their own feces, walking around as broadcast sociopaths, psychopaths, and narcissists, they had the sensors fooled for like 3 years, maybe? They had faked the sensation with like nanos or something, the sensation of compacted feces on my person as a real human being. And some of that other stuff would be like those that were aware of those sensors that thought I was by reading that he had compacted feces feeling behind him, that I was an EMF broadcast, then all of the rules, like you can kill him and he's going to wake up at another location, would have been in play for the psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists that get involved in EMF gang stalking. So I'm the real person, and that's also going on. What else? The lead cap, like, if for people that are targeted individuals, I did a little. The jury's still out on it, but it doesn't stop voices. But for zapping your nervous system, like if you're about to have an orgasm, and a EMF broadcast consciousness in your around you is getting paid to make sure your life is as miserable as possible, they can, I think, like sort of zap you to decrease the pleasure of that component of your life, like because they're sitting around you like 24 hours a day in shifts. They can do it like right when you're having an orgasm. So this helps avoid zapping in that respect of accessing my nervous system for other things other than voice, because the voice stuff still happens. So yeah, I'm not the spiritually unclean one. I haven't been an EMF broadcast of myself for 3 years, 15 years, or ever. 1.5 million Americans are getting perpetrated by, I estimate, about 5 million gang stalkers, many of them with the synthetic telepathy technology, the satellite hookups, and on from there. So yeah, there's terms involved in gang stalking that they've done with, like, called jacking and all kinds of identity thefts. They really were trying to frame me for the perping of 1.5 million TI. And it didn't work. They, sit and falsely accuse of what they do. I guess to piss off or otherwise confuse the EMF people. In 2016, they staged an electromagnetic form of me, I think when I was living in Tualatin, for all the idiots that were watching this broadcast and sacrificing the human condition so that they can get high and kill people. In 2016 in Tualatin, when I started getting perped there, I almost died there. About 15 gang stalkers moved into the apartment complex. What else happened? That's when they may have started some more serious, like, theft of my intellectual property rights or identity theft issues. They do the same thing to what's his name? Philip Walker. Steal his written work and ascribe it to others. So I'm just waking up. So yeah, the gang of stalkers that attacked me for like 3-4 years had a faked sense of feces compaction behind me, a real human being, to make censors think that I was an EMF broadcast electromagnetic person myself. And then, like, identity theft issues, like trying to blame me, a TI, for the perpetrating same plot to enslave every man, woman, and child of 1.5 million Americans. They've tried to cover up the fact that there is 1.5 million Americans. The Black Swiss cheese hole exits, that was under attack. That information's been recovered. Yeah, once you get back out those Black Swiss cheese holes, Americans and rest of the world, you're going to realize all gods are false. You can do your own thing. All this synthetic telepathy stuff mimics possible, like, more organic or real spirituality. I recommend the Solaris Blue Raven interview at Project Camelot. Carrie Cassidy's been martyred. Her home reality as a TI is that she has EMF, or probably most likely electromagnetic form impersonated, or the real thing, gray aliens show up to her apartment. I was bitching about these guys. A couple of them, like, Tried to do like a 2-dimensional broadcast on the wall over here last night. But, yeah, Kevin's had him swinging from his drapes as, swinging as a fireman. You know, people have had the Grinch in their backyard and stuff like that. So, yeah, back in 2016, to I further confuse and lie to the other people watching the broadcast or in the EMF bandwidth off the satellites around 3D. I think this is what they may have done. They had an EMF form of me kill a whole bunch of EMF people, and then somehow in a Zoogstrig attempt tried to make it seem like I, the mammal 3D human Tim Young, killed a whole bunch of EMF people who would be waking up in their own beds anyways. They would only feel on pain of death. Yeah, in 2016 when I was living at Mohawk, and I almost committed suicide, and for character assassination and otherwise lie, they staged for their secret surveillance group me as an EMF form slaughtering a whole bunch of people. Meanwhile, as a real human being, they faked feces compaction around me to make it think for sensors and people to be aware of that I was an EMF broadcast of myself, and thus if I got killed, I would wake up in my other bed. But no, if I got killed, I would have died. And then they may have like had an EMF broadcast live out the rest of my life or whatever they thought. Okay, so black Swiss cheese holes, and it's forgiveness for everybody. These guys perping me here don't even think there's life after death. They don't think there's anything beyond, you know. So if there is life after death, know your black Swiss cheese holes. They're not going to be able to suicide me. You know, in 30, 40 years, when I'm an old man, I may plan my death, much like I've already laid out here. But stop the suicidal intent. Stop, you know, placing blame on others. Stop accusing of what you do. Stop the satanic misdirection. Stop trying to steal my identity. Stop the mimicry. None of that's going to happen. Stop. I'm telling these gang stalkers to stop being psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists who have no repercussions for their actions, even more so because they're alive in other locations. What the Christians were told of, the spiritually unclean sleeping in their own feces, and to fool everybody that would be aware of gang stalking and would know anything, like to read a sensor, like he's got, you know, feces compaction sensation behind him. That's not a real human being. That's been going on for like 3 or 4 years, and I'm a real human being, and it sets me up to be more murderable among other criteria. So all they need is my location, the satellite hookup, the website, and I'm toast. The Tesla coil that I ordered yesterday, they closed off the street maybe so I wouldn't get it. I'll get the Tesla coil. I'll get fucking 3 of them if I have to. I'm in a great outpatient facility in Hillsboro. The staff is working with me and talking about how these electromagnetic form broadcasters are a danger to my mental health and a lot of others. 1.5 million Americans. And if there's 3 of them on us at once in a 24-hour shift, or just that might not be the most reasonable calculation, but trying to estimate how many gang stalkers there are after the Blackwater release of the data of the 1.5 million TI, I estimated there's maybe 5 million, and then also many with this same technological capability. So I'm not the spiritually unclean, but they falsely accused me of that, and then had ways to fool the censors to make the entities believe that I was a broadcast of myself. They tried to steal my identity. They tried to blame me for perping of 1.5 million people. they tried the false religion, but it's really Satanism, and it's like the same stuff that's happening to Kevin at Howard Circle, Kevin Christian of Atlanta. In my case, they tried to do like a false religion, but it's really Satanism and state-sponsored Zugstrig. I survived community slander, an airbag, nothing else, saved my life when I tried to take it, dying of false hope, neurolinguistic programming, and yeah, it was pretty impulsive. I did try to kill myself by driving my car 85, no seatbelt, at a power line. I'm not going to do that again. And the airbag saved me. So I got out of the car. I had a little ouchie on my ankle, couple broken ribs, and a scratch like right there on the bridge of my nose. This is about a year's growth. It was cool. Like maybe 6 months ago, I was like in the DMV, and there was this guy, and he'd been working on his beard and stuff, and it was grown out pretty good. And I was like, you know, kind of early into growing mine out. He's like, yeah, you really got to commit to it. And he's right, yeah. I'm hoping that this is about a year's growth. I hope this gets to be about a 15 years growth. I want to live to be an old man. So for those that have my remote neural monitoring and are having the sensory experience of me through this tech and their EMF broadcasts passed out in other locations, they feel some of the stuff I feel. They may have modifications, but if I like hit my knee, you know, somebody may feel it. If I have an orgasm, somebody may feel it. And it was the same crew, or I don't know who it was, the same group of gang stalkers or other gangs attacking me. For like 3 years, they were fooling sensors by falsifying a feces compaction behind me to make AI. They've made reference of that before. Other gang stalkers and whatnot think that anytime they read my body for that sensor indicator for like 3 years. So yeah, a falsified feces compaction sensation behind me to make me, a TI, out to be the spiritually unclean. So that sensors would think I was at my own Howard Circle, passed out, laying in my own feces, and that what was walking around as me was an EMF broadcast of me. They did something pretty clever. They were, and not in sort of a bad way, in a detective way. Like there was wondering like when David, who's a staff member for Sequoia Mental Health, was getting switched out with an EMF perpetrator, and when he was himself. And they may have like sort of broken off a chair of a leg a little bit downstairs, so that if a human being sat in it, like a 3D human being, the chair would fall apart. If maybe a lighter, like not going to put really much any weight on the chair, EMF person sat on it, like the chair would not break. And it was part of observation and like partly just because I sat in the chair and it broke, but they may have set up a chair with like a leg that was kind of barely on there, so that if you were a real human being with weight, the chair would fall apart. If you sat in the chair and nothing happened, you were probably an EMF perpetrator. So that I sat in a chair downstairs where David regularly sat, and it in a few minutes fell apart like that, and it didn't like crack and break or anything like that. It may have been designed to detect EMF perpetrators. So I'm at the Sequoia LifeWorks Mental Health Facility in Hillsboro. Sensors that have been reading this information have thought I was an EMF broadcast of myself for like 3 years by reading the feces compaction sensation, which was falsified. Identity theft, they've tried to blame me for perping of 1.5 million Americans and false religion, but it's really Satanism. Solved the butt hurt, even if you're getting a falsified feces compaction sensation from you, the electromagnet or the N52 level magnet will counter that. The black Swiss cheese hole information is preserved, and I'm gonna live to like 70 or 80 or something like that. And the Buddhism helped me endure the synthetic telepathy torture. Everything over the last 15 years, being a TI and otherwise, is more or less the Buddhist Satan or Mara. And what they do in the EMF bandwidth, that was more or less sort of foretold or otherwise observed before this tech some 2,300 years ago. They could have interactions where they like kill a whole bunch of electromagnetic form people in EMF form, and they wake up in their real bodies on machines in other locations. So that's and to put my life at risk, they were making sure that I looked like an EMF broadcast myself. I'm not, so I've solved that problem. So I don't know if you can see this here. There's this red truck right over here, and so just to let you know how this goes, that may be a perpetrator who's been like paid to sit there all night and whatnot, and they show up as people on the front line of like people they want to get the blowback or shit talked about or whatnot. So the Expendables, or show them up as have somebody show up as somebody you hate. But yeah, I was making a joke. You got your white trucks and your treason. So I'm not an EMF broadcaster myself, nor have I been for the last 3 years. They're not going to be able to suicide me, but they're still going to try. I'll get my Tesla coil in the mail. And this hat here, the N52 level hat, helps insulate your nervous system from any zapping or otherwise activity to disrupt you as a TI. So it's not totally placebo, but it doesn't stop the voices. The Tesla coil will make it hot in this room, and then a light projected around me so I'm harder to see in the EMF bandwidth. I've got the 30 volt power supply, and they really did shut down the street yesterday, maybe around when the Tesla coil was going to get delivered. I'll get the Tesla coil. If it doesn't come today, I'll reorder it because, you know, I never received the package. If I need to get two, I'll get two. And then what it does, allegedly, it makes this big light so I'm harder to see, and then it puts out heat that they may feel and I won't in the EMF bandwidth. So good morning.